Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson and LD, and we're here at Glenda's Dragon's Den, and we have a phenomenal guest. And today, before I introduce her, you can find us on the Conscious Awakening Network under the channel of Glenda's Magical Creations, and on we're seen on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, Apple TV, soon to come Android TV. We are basically all over the place. And thank you for following us and keeping with the journey of all the beautiful guests, spiritual guests that we're having. And I'm hoping that you're reaching out to them to get more information, to continue your growth, and be the true self that you're meant to be.
So if I understand you correctly, after you introduce the guest, they can't find us anymore?
No, they can find it.
Oh, you said before I introduce the guest, they can find us. They can find us after 2. You're just saying.
All right. So
I'm not that bright, so I got to clarify things.
So welcome, Morgan. How are you today?
Good, Glenda. How are you? Hi, Larry.
Hi.
Wonderful. So you are such an interesting person. I read what you sent to us and the awakening that you had. When was that and how did it occur?
In 1999, I had horrendous pain that I'd put up with for years in my coccyx. Mm-hmm. And I worked at Bankers Trust in a big corporate industry. And one of the ladies in there had for months been convincing me that I should try something called Bowen therapy. She was a Bowen therapist. So eventually I gave in and went to have this Bowen therapy session. And the minute she put her hands on me, Merlin turned up in front of me, and I could see him as clearly as I could see anyone in front of me, literally in front of me. And he spoke to me. He did all these activations on me, and it was like an instant awakening. Instant awakening. And I spent the next 4 months walking around in a Buddhist state. Strangers were coming up to touch me, and look, I just didn't know what was going on, but everything was just perfect. And then from there, I spent the next 20-something years trying to get back to that state.
Okay.
So how do you connect to Merlin that he would show up? What did that mean to you?
At the time, it meant nothing. I mean, it was so astounding. I had no idea what was going on. The woman that was actually working on my back just disappeared. There was nothing but myself or Merlin. He basically told me who I was, what I needed to do, what I had to work, with my inner child and inner teenager and young adult, like go through and clear everything. He gave me really specific instructions. But I didn't know who Merlin was. I had been watching, I think my son was 9 at the time. Oh my goodness. My daughter I'm talking about, my son wasn't even born. And we were watching the series Merlin. So, it made no sense to me because I knew Merlin to be a young man. Have you seen the series? He's young, got short brown hair, and this really old version. And when he arrived, he was in almost like a throne, and he stood up and he came straight in front of me and I didn't know who Merlin was. Sorry, I should have been simple.
Well, it's a good thing he showed up older, because if Harry Potter had showed up, you probably wouldn't listen to him. So, it works out. Now, what does it mean to you that Merlin showed up? Do you understand why it was Merlin now?
Yes, absolutely. Every day after that, Merlin would turn up, but he also brought this older woman too, and he kept telling me, this is the soul mother. This is the soul mother. And between the two of us, we're going to teach you everything that you need to know.
So why was it Merlin? What is that? What is the significance of Merlin now that you understand why he showed up?
The only significance that I really understand is he was the exact right frequency and the best match as a teacher, I guess, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well,
sounds amazing.
And I think that's important for people to understand when these things happen. You may not understand why they're happening at the time, but there's usually a reason, and usually has something to do with harmonics. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I knew from the very beginning not to attach to who it was. That was the exact right symbol or metaphor for me. And at the end of the day, the exact right frequency that I was coded that I was going to pick up on very quickly.
And the spiritual mother.
The soul mother.
The soul mother, yes.
Yeah. Pretty much the same thing, really. She was just another frequency that was going to fit in perfectly for what was coming as well.
And so what did it bring? What did that experience bring to you?
Well, once those first 3 or 4 months was over and I came back to being human, I would things like, every night during the night I was vomiting rocks. And then a week later I was vomiting gravel. And a week later I was vomiting stones. And a week later I was vomiting up. So there was all this clearing first. And then they started training me in how to find my own shadow. How a duality, and like really understanding the 0 point, how to get there and how to neutralize the two spectrums of duality.
Right.
It comes right down into the middle. So I was taught processes how to do that. I was very quickly taught how to connect up into other dimensions for information that I needed. I mean, they taught me everything, really everything that I knew. Yeah.
So they basically ignited your knowledge again, brought it to this lifetime so you could remember everything that you already knew.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now, did you change jobs right away? Did you change direction of how your life was going?
Yes. Yes, as you do. As you do. And interestingly, I think about 2 years after that, I started just seeing my son. Like I wasn't even in a relationship. I was single, and these words would fly out of my mouth to people. I'm getting married, and I've got a baby son coming soon. And I remember telling my nana, and she said to me, "Oh, I didn't even know you had a boyfriend." I'm like, "Oh, I don't yet, but don't worry about that." And when I said that to her, and I would have told everyone I saw, everyone I could think of, within a couple of days. A week later to the day, I met my husband to be. And I think it was 11 months after that my son was born.
There you go. There you go.
So I guess you told him.
Well, clearly it was my son telling me. Yeah. It was a very strange thing. But I mean, that's, those sort of things just started happening all the time.
Synchronicity is kind of like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And now, so how old was your daughter by the time you had your son?
She was 12.
Okay. And, the girl who was used to being by herself, she must have been saying to herself, Mom is going a little crazy with the getting married, having a child and all that. I could just imagine that must have been interesting.
Yeah, yes, it really was. I was really coming out of a predominantly unwoken world, although I look back now and see where it was all as well, and into like a whole new world. And I think that was probably hard on her. Like I always say to people, my first child I brought up pretty unconscious. I bought every parental book. I was so unsure of myself. And the second child, it was a whole different experience. Like he came and I was open to learning from him. Like he let me know what he was doing. And it was two worlds.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've done parent-sibling relationship coaching. That was the niche I chose. And I've always asked people to consider that it's not the parent that raises the child. It's actually the child that raises the parent.
Yeah, well, they're attempting to. They get a lot of fight back from us. But imagine what would happen if a baby arrived and from the very beginning we knew we're here to support this soul and we're going to follow this baby's guidance, this child's guidance. I mean, imagine what type of humans we'd have.
Mm. We have very spiritual, open humans.
We're actually working with 8 in that position right now as best we can and as much as they are open, because that's really what it's about, because they have the connection unless we break it.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And so how was your husband was your husband awakened, or was your husband or the second husband had to be awakened? How did that?
Well, my ex-husband now was open to it for a very short period in the beginning, very open to it initially and then shut down quite quickly. Being an Air Force in the pilot, he just couldn't, he wouldn't do anything himself, but he'd send people that he worked with. You need to go and see my wife. She knows how to show you how you can balance that out. Or, yeah, it was interesting. But, yeah, no, he wouldn't. He couldn't. He couldn't, align with that. It was too hard.
Right. It was very hard changing gears, going from the Air Force to human life, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And now you, how is your son and your daughter? Are they now into the spiritual things, or?
They are both perfect reflections of the programming that they grew up with.
Mm.
So my daughter is living a very Stepford housewife sort of life, and my son goes with the flow, adventurous, like just lives in joy and makes really clear, conscious decisions, and yeah, it's incredible.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And that probably fits your daughter for right now, until that day when she's ready to open up and go to the next step.
Another one of my sayings is we become what we allow. And a lot of that has to do with the programming and the dogma.
Yeah. And so you said 0.0. Tell us a little bit more about that.
0 pointing.
0 point, sorry.
All right. If you're open to it, just as a perfect example, if one of you could give me one negative trait of one of your parents.
Okay, I could do that.
Yeah.
My father was at times very abusive, verbally.
Abusive. Okay. Verbally abusive.
Right.
Verbally abusive. Okay. So what would be the polar opposite of that? If somebody wasn't being verbally abusive, what are they?
Oh, he was very loving. He was literally.
Okay. So what's the polar opposite of verbal abuse?
Nonverbal abuse. No, not abusive, period.
Okay, so not abusive, but if we switch that to a positive word.
Loving? Caring?
Supportive?
Yeah.
Supportive?
There. Okay, so that's closer. I'm just bringing the verbal. If you say your father was verbally abusive,
right.
Somebody who was opposite to your father would be supportive. Right. So how does this work? So if you go, okay, well, my father was verbally abusive, so that's within my DNA, and it's also in the experience that I grew up with.
Right.
So what happens for us, and it's mostly when we're teenagers, we flip over into, I'm going to be the polar opposite. I am never going to be verbally abusive like my father. I'm going to be supportive. But because they're both out of balance, what happens for you is you become excessively supportive, so much so that you neglect yourself or you lose your voice. You don't speak up when you should. So you've actually got both polarities. And at times, you probably through your life done the verbal abuse yourself. But, so you've got you usually end up with a bigger spectrum or of the excessive supportiveness.
Right.
because also within your DNA is the potential for being verbally abusive. So they both exist.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens is in our field, we send out a signal. I need to find a way to balance this because there's a balance point between those two.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do it? You send out a signal to somebody who's going to be either verbally abusive or excessively supportive like you. And if it's too much the same, we don't like them because they're too nice. We're looking for somebody who's going to help us find a way to 0 point that one program.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's even more interesting because she's a Gemini. So depending on which side of the bed she gets out of, I've seen both spectrums.
Right. So when we own both spectrums and we neutralize them, they don't have to play out anymore, but we actually have to own both parts.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
So that means that you're definitely not basic. So I guess I'm the basic one. You're the acid.
Oh,
Yeah, no, don't get me started.
You know, if we take that a little step further, you need to find somebody who's going to play that out with you. So that lets us know that your partner has both of those programs active as well.
okay. That's very interesting.
Is that how you're living it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just checking. So see, she healed us.
Well, at least you're not dead yet.
Yeah, it's the Dread Pirate Roberts theory. I'll probably kill you tomorrow. I'm a big Princess Bride fan.
Yeah, he is. So, that sounds like a very, very good program, and it would help. It helps show people exactly where they need to work more, what points they need to work on to balance themselves so they're not extreme opposites. Very good. Very good. And you basically just channel this information. Did it come to you through?
It's interesting. It comes to me through like a fairly basic foundation of the possibility, and then I have to work it out. So I create it from, like, I'm given the frequency of it or the code of it, and then I have to translate it into how's it going to work for the human.
Okay.
So you kind of reverse engineer it.
I guess so. Well, I translate it for myself so I can understand it. They when it came in, what happened was they explained to me that if I wrote a list of every negative attribute of my mother, I would be able to find the polar opposite of all of those attributes. And I've now found the bulk of my feminine, well, it's not always all feminine, is it? But the bulk of the programs that I picked up through the DNA from my mum, which were then reiterated throughout my childhood, and most go through life blaming our mother. You know, she was this and she was this and she was this, and we can't see our own side. And it doesn't matter which spectrum it's at, the whole program is mine.
Right.
And then I went on to explain, and then you do your father, and you've got, you know, a shitload of those programs sorted already. But if you added every emotion and feeling under each word as well, then you've covered even more of it. And then the next person you do is your partner or ex-partner. So you can start seeing how all the patterns continually played out, recreating more and more and more cycles. And I'm going, wow, that was amazing. How am I going to do this myself? So, yeah, so you get some basics and then it expands from there.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like how they're giving you the basics and letting you work through it so you understand it better so you can then explain it better.
And because I do it myself, I become my first client. And in the learning of how powerful it is to take full responsibility for all of our own duality, then it expands from there again.
Okay. And so how long have you been, do you do private sessions or group sessions, or how does that work?
It is. For this are mostly private sessions, but when I first released it, I ended up with well over 1,000 people wanting to do it. So I ran some groups for a couple of months till they got through. But yeah, I teach. I share the process of zero pointing in a one-on-one session. And a manual comes with that, with all of the information too. You know, it expanded on from there into, okay, once my parents were done, or exes, then I had to do every single other person I knew, because every single person is a mirror of our programs. And we usually go with judgment and miss, well, what over this side have I got? And then you can see, you know, the same as well. Then I think by step 3, they said, right, now we want you to go through and clear all of the programs that you've got running around being what is love, or sexuality, or being a woman, or like to actually consciously go through and clear all the programs that we've got running around everything, really.
Sounds like a very good.
It sounds like a lot of what I went through, because I grew up in a very challenging environment, and my parenting is primarily the opposite of what I experienced from my father. So,
yeah, mine was with my daughter as well. My parenting with my daughter was the absolute opposite. So my mother was very neglectful of her children, and I was very smothering of my daughter. But if I look at the grandmother was also smothering, and the one before that was neglectful. So you start seeing these ancestral patterns coming down, and we think if we do the opposite, I'm going to do a much better job. And yeah, not always the case.
Well, we try, right?
Absolutely, we try, yes.
Nobody comes with a handbook, unfortunately.
well, again, they show you what they need, and you're either open to providing it or figuring out how to get it for them or not.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true. So, what else do you do at this moment?
I was guided 18 months ago to put all of these processes all together. So the Herioscamos, the merging, the soul merging, the zero pointing, and the connection into other dimensions. I was asked to put them all together and create circles to bring into groups, small, so everyone could share and talk. It wasn't just one person running the circle. Putting it all together and running that as circles. So when you get, 10, 12, maybe up to 15 people all there with all of their own stuff as well, and you're merging all that information into one, we're actually playing in the energy of oneness. We're actually practicing, training our minds, our brains, our abilities and skills and everything. When you do energy work and you're just doing it by yourself, or you're doing it on one another, it's pretty powerful. But when you're doing that energy work in the same way, and you're now doing it all as absolute equals in one circle, it's like energy work on steroids.
Very good. Now you do this in person, on Zoom?
Yeah, I run 3 circles currently at the moment, and we do it on Zoom. We're all there. And we'll take off. We go into the grid itself. We become one with the grid, and we start playing with the energy in the grid. Or like last week, all the circles, we went into the column of light that's created by every member in there. It creates this big, and we all walked into the column and had other experiences as well. One of the ladies in last Wednesday's group introduced a piece of geometry. I don't know what it's called. And then last night I was told, this lady brought the code in for what we're doing this week. So I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but between the 10 or 12 or 14 of us are there, we'll work it out together. What are we meant to do with this exquisite piece of sacred geometry that we've never, that we haven't really seen before? So do we become one with it? Do we activate it within our own fields? Like, what happens? So it's a magic that's built by every single person that attends.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And the energy.
And how often do you admit people into these groups or start new groups?
Well, starting a new group is usually done by demand, but we're finding like a new person will. I don't try to control anything, but organically we'll have a new person start, once a month or something. And we find by the fourth or the fifth, or that person is letting us know. It's not that person is letting us know they've actually aligned with the energy of the group now. Like their lives are matching their understandings, like everything's matching the energy of the group really, really fast. It's quite fascinating to watch.
And so someone watching this is feeling called to finding out more about it. What's the best place for them to go?
I think the best thing would be to send me an email, because what I usually do is send out a recording so they've got an idea of what happens and can see and feel the power of it. And does this align with me or doesn't it? So I do that first, and then I give them instructions on how to join after that. And keeping it very cheap too. I mean, $22 USA a week for an experience of that level of oneness is very good, I think.
Very good.
And is the email on your .com? Where can they find the email?
I don't know. Where can they find it? I guess it's on it'll be on my webpage, zeropointing.com.
Okay.
And it's also on my Facebook page. I'm pretty sure that
on your Facebook page. Okay.
email is there as
So
well.
I'll lead them there, and they could message you there also, and find all the rest of the information.
If they send you a message, if they can't happen to find the email, will you lead them to the email then?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
definitely. I'm happy to say the email now, if I can remember it. It's zeropointing, all one word, zeropointing369@gmail.com.
Now, is that zero as a word or zero as a number?
Zero as a word, ZERO pointing 369@gmail.com.
Okay. I will put that up right now. And let's see. So there, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy.
So now this soulology that you also have going, what is that about?
So when I met Todd 7 years ago, and I told him of a dream of, I wish, because it's been, as you would know, it's been a very lonely experience. Like most of us have done this by ourselves. So I remember seeing a woman that was doing it just on radio, and I'm like, God, we need that. Like we need that. All of us need a hub, somewhere where we can all come together and know that we're not going crazy, or share our experiences, or give skills, tools, frequencies, codes, like all of it. And so we created, well, Todd had actually already, he'd been told on my birthday a couple of years beforehand to start a Facebook group called Sology, and he'd hop on there and write poetry or his opinions or whatever. So when we came together, we co-created and expanded it out into what Sology is now. And so Todd does all the talking. He's the one that interviews everybody, and we invite people from all over the world to come and share their experiences, whether it's current intel or different things that they've learned, like all of that. So it's a hub. I guess it's a hub for all of us woo-woo people or weirdos come and just share.
Very good. So this way people don't feel like they're alone. And it's very important to find a group, or as I call it sometimes, a tribe, that knows where you're coming from and doesn't mock you for it, but also empowers you.
Yeah, my definition of a weirdo is someone who's pried the lid off the box and crawled out. That's just me. And that's just me.
So how is this group evolving as you said, it evolved from where it was to now. The process that did you just come up with different ideas, or did you share ideas, or just
So up until March this year, it had been running just on Facebook. It was just open. It was free. I think we end up building between it's got little side platforms as well. I think it came up to nearly 200,000 people.
mm,
And then Todd has had a dream through all of it as well. And his dream was he wanted to create a platform that was away from Facebook and all those, that didn't have restrictions and things like that. So he's just put that into place in March.
mm-hmm.
It's being built as it's opening at the same time. So it's changed everything. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the future just yet, but yeah, he really wanted to take it away from the normal social media, where we wouldn't be restricted and stuff like that. So it's at a very early stages of a potential change.
Okay. And is it called Solology also?
It's Sology Network.
Network.
SologyNetwork.com. Yeah.
Okay. And let me just make sure. So there it goes.
Does that look right to you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So people can find you definitely there and join and be without the restrictions.
I
Because
think what's is that 300 or 400 people, they were trying to keep it, the builders are trying to keep it small at the moment to work out all the bugs, and then
right.
when it's all fixed, then it'll be opened up and put out, for many more as well. But they're trying to keep it a bit small at the moment as it's being built, and to make sure the bugs are fixed before too much
Definitely.
joy. Yeah.
So now how do you see yourself or going forward?
How do I see myself going forward? That's a bit of a tricky question at the moment because everything's changing so hugely at the moment. Like, I'm aware that for the last 2 weeks, collectively, we've been shifting betrayal, and not just betrayal, but where we were betrayed, and then all the programs associated with that and excess emotions and feelings. Then we had to look at how we betrayed ourselves and clear all those programs and excess emotions and everything. And then thirdly was where and how and why we betrayed others. And so that's been stripped from the grid at the moment. That's just been completely rewritten. And once that's gone, and what does it look like living on this planet where there is no more competition and protection and fright and flight and all that sort of stuff? And I'm told that we're going to begin to move into rejuvenation.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, what does the future look like? I don't know just yet, because we've actually just achieved this a couple of days ago, 21st of May, a massive big collective shift. So that's a question. What does the future look like? Well, I don't know now.
Well, yes, I got basically the same message that during March, April, and May, we're going to be a lot of stuff being revealed. A lot of people who are not as close as you thought they were, and everybody's truth was going to come out, which is very interesting because we were also, I know I was surprised at a few. That all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay. All right, so how do I deal with that? and that's definitely so. I'm glad that I'm not the only one working through that part of the grid, because that has been a very interesting ride in the last few months. Needless to say. So, and now, were you working with your groups also through that?
Yeah, that was such a gift because not all the time, but often I'll come in, we'll start a group and say, how is everyone going? And the first person will say, I don't know, I've been feeling such grief and such shame and stuff like that. And the next person will say, yeah, I had this really big experience, where I realized that my ex had betrayed me. And just listening to the people, you could feel the collective, they were all going through it. So then that would let us all know, okay, once we get into the New Earth grid, let's actually start asking for help or sending a wave or a pulse directly to these programs. So it was really helpful having those circles, and every group is the same. Like we'd all do it like that week, and the next week the next thing's coming. So we were working together, and because we were working together, it was like the power was on steroids. You could clear it in the group, get off the call, and what you'd been suffering for the last 24 or 48 hours was completely neutralized.
Yes, it was very hard for me because I was basically just learning about different things, and I was like, okay, that explains a lot why that person did that and how it affected, how it came about, and how it showed up, basically, because sometimes the trigger point isn't exactly how it ends. So,
That's right. Yeah.
so it was very interesting. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been getting that the month of June is going to be deeper inner work, and it's going to be digging in places you have forgotten about and you shoved under there, and all that has to come out, because I believe what the intention is by the end of this year, those that are awake and those that are ascending will be a lot lighter, so to speak.
Yeah.
At a lot higher frequency.
Right.
Yeah. But also I think what we're noticing is as we're going down deeper and deeper and deeper, and we're once upon a time, if this had come up a year ago or even 6 months ago, it would have almost destroyed us emotionally.
Yes.
Everything we're clearing. So what's going to be coming through in the future, because just this energy of betrayal is no longer in existence. It changes the whole mind concepts, changes the perceptions. So we're being readied to deal with our deepest things from a much more balanced state.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I can see that. Well, thank you for kind of
Validating that.
Yes, because I was like, I'm getting that message, but I'm like, I think we just went through war right now. We came through the other end. I think we need a break. And they're like saying, no, that was just to help you and for the next step. And it's like, okay, all righty, here we go. So you have anything?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my turn.
Yes, your turn.
So, how do you like poetry?
How do I like poetry? I did a merging with Todd, merging the throat chakra to his throat chakra, and I'd never written poetry in my life. And after that merging, I actually started writing poetry myself.
The reason I ask is I'm a composer lyricist, and I wrote a song which I presented to my father on Father's Day, some 20 years ago. And if you would be so kind, I'd like to share it with you and get your feedback on it. Ready?
Yeah. Yep.
Father, you wanted to be father, but what I needed was a dad. Perfect. Expected me to be perfect, and when I wasn't, you got mad. I've seen a lot of years go by. I've seen a lot of schemes go dry. I've had a lot of childhood dreams die. Why? Father, you always played a role. Father, stiff figure growing cold. But I needed you to understand me. Perfect. We could have had it so perfect if you'd have helped me grow. and shown me life was so quicksandy. You tried to prepare me for the world with all the insults that you hurled. I wish the wisdom had been a little more pearled, and I thought, maybe next time we'll learn. Maybe next time's our turn to share what we both yearn for. Father, I know you tried your best. Father, let's let the bitter rest. Just long enough to be a boy and a dad. Perfect. Well, neither one of us is perfect, but then we didn't turn out so bad.
So when you listen to yourself say that, what did you feel or think about it?
Well, to me, it sort of worked through what you were saying earlier, getting out all of that conflict and that rebellion against uh, what he tried to do. And, I think most parents try to do the best that they can do, but the dogma and life and everything else kind of gets in the way of it. So, for the most part, I feel he had the intentions that he valued and tried to live up to that. But the time in which he got those intentions and lived up to, I mean, I tried to talk to him about climate change in the 80s, and he gave me, you know how much it would take just to raise the ocean 1 degree? And I'm like, okay, but. And so we would have the discussions, but he was just so rooted into the dogma and the lies and the betrayals that he had lived, that the last couple of months I was able to help him move out of that, which was very beneficial. But even today, it's nice to know that people are going through that evolution and getting past and recognizing the betrayals and confronting them and moving through them. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of betrayals, and it's all part of what society does to try and maintain morals and mores that they can use to control the masses, in my experience.
Yeah, well, that's the external AI, isn't it? But even the story is another form of AI. Was your father stuck in dogma, or was he simply stuck within his own DNA programming? And the external stories then match what's really going on. So we can pull an external story out. We might say, for example, I've never met anyone more self-sabotaging than, and that's the point to stop and say, myself.
Okay. Very good.
Or you might say, I've never met anyone more dogmatic, thinking, beginning the thought with your father and then going, than myself, and really sitting with, shit, am I dogmatic? And if you can't find it, you find the opposite of dogmatic. Am I leaning over too far that way?
Well, anytime I get too bendy, she snaps me back. She tries to keep me centered and grounded, and then I snap back and bonk her, and she gets centered and grounded. So
when you wrote that poem, if I ask you what age, and I'm not talking literally, what is the age of the voice that wrote that poem?
it was the child.
Yeah.
It was the child being conquered, or that he was attempting to conquer and break the spirit of, and get me to realize that it's you against the world. And it's not you against the world. That's the illusion, because it's oneness. And that's where the self-sabotaging comes from, isn't it?
Yeah. And the true betrayal is the self that agreed to fall into it.
Exactly.
whether you are 3 years old or 5 years old or however, but the true betrayal is that you bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I never, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's always that corrective back and forth where you're trying to center, but nobody really was ever able to break my spirit, and most people just gave up trying. And because, you know, I'm very fortunate that I was able to get from the age of 5 guidance from entities, you know, similar to Merlin. And that's really what I've listened to.
Good.
But the people that unfortunately aren't there, yeah, that's what they walk. And just for me to give him that, you know, and the interesting part was he actually heard it. You know, he said, yeah, that's pretty much what I did. But you know, I did what I thought was right. I said, yeah, well, I didn't say you didn't, but this is what you did, and this is kind of what I needed. So, but yeah, it's a process. And you know, what I used to tell the clients I had was, you have until your last breath to get it. You know, just keep working. You know, just keep moving forward, and you know, the opportunities will be there, and the ones that call you take, and continue to evolve. It's never too late to start, and you have until your last breath.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is there a median age of people that find you? Do you find that certain, you know, stages of life kind of realize, hey, this isn't cutting it, and I gotta move forward, or is it people from all ages and all walks of life?
It's really people from all ages and all walks of life, except for these groups. These groups, I'm going to say, they actually have. We all seem to be anywhere between late 40s and 70s. This has been the loudest standout. It's like everyone who's coming from the group seemed to be in that age group.
So they're more than ready. They're more than ready.
So is it like a mid-age crisis rescue type of thing?
No, I think what Glenda said, I think they're ready. They know that they're capable and ready. I mean, we're getting hints only in the last couple of weeks. It's starting to feel like we're actually stepping out of a sacred circle of oneness into sometimes stepping into the energy of a, gosh, what are they called? A council, like a conscious council, where there's some things that we're doing where we're like, we've stepped out of being the human attending a sacred circle into this is like being a part of a conscious council.
Right. Council of 9. That's
Well, it's no particular number, really. I mean, sometimes, yeah, but yeah, almost starting to play the role of the human attending, the higher self being there, as well as the soul monad, all playing together as one, as well as connected to that universal one mind, universal intelligence.
right.
It's like it's expanding quite rapidly now. Is that a thing about age? I just thought, no, there's actually one lady in the USA group that's probably mid-30s. Yeah, I think it just depends on the person. I don't think there's a specific anything to it. It's just, yeah.
Do you think incarnations, number of incarnations, has any effect on the people that are attracted to these groups? Do you
I
find
don't
it
know.
to be old souls or new souls or all souls or?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I've ever thought of, but I think, I don't know if there's any requirements other than I actually want to be part of this dimensional work because I want to anchor and embody that into my own field and therefore have those codes available in my own environment. I don't know if there's any prerequisites.
Well, there is a lot of awakening moments now, awakening people getting awakened and starting to look for that. look for whatever they need, codes or workshops or just what I call groups, tribes, whatever, just to get that food, basically. So,
See themselves,
yeah.
honestly, to experience themselves and actually understand whether I'm in front of one other or there's another 10 or 15 there.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's we're all seeing ourselves and we're all seeing each other, and it's like a real reverence.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Um, and yes, the whole thing that you said about the council, the council has been there. They have been. There's one particular council that came back to take care of humans, to try to bring them up to their the correct vibrational level. And they're called Council of Nine, but they're many different entities or spirits, whatever you want to call it. Some are archangels, some are ascended masters, some are aliens, as they call it, or galactic. Some are just our conscious or our oversoul coming down in pieces or whatever we need to help us travel to the right sections of the matrix or get out of the matrix, whichever it is that we need at that particular moment, and to work through what has happened to us up to now, whether it's in lifetimes or in this lifetime or in moments, to get rid of those anchors so we can basically flow up to where we need to go.
Well, you sound like you're in touch with this council.
Yes, I am.
Oh,
I am. So, but there is one particular one that's come back. There are other ones that are coming in the process of coming back. They were here many, 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 many lifetimes ago, and basically the ego of humans sent them away. So now they're coming back to try to save humanity, so we can continue evolving and continue learning our lessons and continue being in this place that even though it's 3D, which is very heavy, we could move to 5D at some point, but those new souls that need still the 3D to learn what they need to learn and evolve however they need to evolve, still have that place.
are they trying to save us, or are they trying to empower us to save ourselves?
Empower us to
Oh,
save
okay.
ourselves. But,
Just trying to.
they're bringing the opportunity for us to get there.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's so nice to get to know you, and that you're have this important piece that's
yes.
you've made accessible to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting for me, because you know so many people are struggling, and to be able, uh, for the amount that you said earlier, get involved and start seeing if this resonates with you, if you're ready for this, and have a path to move forward, is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Now, is there anything? We've got about 5 minutes left. Uh, is there anything that you would like to add that you haven't touched on so far?
Yeah, so you two are like a conscious union, a divine union, like are you, yeah?
Yeah.
Kind of twin flame,
Twin souls, twin
twin
flame.
souls.
Yes.
And how long have you been together?
Okay.
Yeah, you need to really qualify that question.
In this lifetime, I actually saw him in the 80s in New York. I was there for the beginning of my training of Reiki, and I saw him and I heard right away he's not ready. I'm like, okay, no problem. And then back in 2016, they told him to go with a friend to this one class that I was a member of, and I used to go weekly. And I was talking to my friends,
Her entourage.
my
Let's
entourage,
call them what they were.
my friends, and he just passes by, and I'm not even facing him, and I'm talking to him, and he says something, and I just basically say, "Is that how you speak to somebody you don't know?" And it just came out naturally, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go."
And how did I reply to that invitation? That challenge. Is that a challenge?
You should hear what I don't say.
It's more like you should hear the shit I don't say, is what I said.
And then, of course, that was,
Love at first sight.
yeah, or not
Mm.
say, because I didn't even look at you
Now
until
yeah,
afterwards.
well,
But ever since then,
the
basically.
eyes in the back of your head was trying to burn a hole in me. But is that something you picked up just from our repartee, or is that something you see? Because the truth is, when I met her, and I haven't admitted this to her, I got the message, "No, that's not in your league," which, frankly, I never listened to. But I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. I'm not there yet. So it's interesting that both of us kind of got that in our own way. So how did you pick up on that? Just out of curiosity.
I didn't. I was just being a typical human sticky beak, just wondering if you were a couple and if you had a frequency that you aligned with. That's all.
Yes.
But yeah, not surprised to hear it. So yeah, very cool. So you met in the same city. That's handy.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
this lifetime.
Yeah. It's been the same city. And then we met in New York, and then we met in Pennsylvania. So we both had to literally move to Pennsylvania to meet again, and this time for good, so to speak. But yeah, it's a interesting journey. Seems like a lifetime.
And in New York, someone I know got the message from a shaman to tell me it's waiting for you in Pennsylvania. So the move was more than just that, but yeah, it's very patient sometimes.
Very good.
Lord.
Mm.
Well, I'd like to say thank you. This was fantastic. Um, Learned so much, and the way you approaching things and running the groups and coming with all that knowledge is wonderful. And I don't know about anybody else, but I appreciate when people actually share that type of knowledge, that type of way of doing things at a point where we need it the most,
And make it accessible to
and make it
people.
accessible. Yes, yes, definitely. Because a lot of people know a lot, but they just keep it to themselves or to their tight circle. And I'm like,
Or their ego forces them to make it elite.
yeah. And it's like, that's silly. We're here to, all of us to learn, and all of us to ascend. The faster we do it, the faster we get out of this heaviness. It's, people just don't understand that it's not a one person ride; it's a oneness ride. So,
And if
Well,
you
it's
could
actually
stay
both.
on, I'm sorry.
I said, but it is actually both. It is a oneness as well as a one person. And when we're
right.
going through, yeah, our individuality is as big an important place, as big a role as it does in the oneness, the collective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I try to explain that even though in a way we're grains of sand on the beach has changed without any grain of sand there. So every grain of sand holds its place. If you could
Yeah.
stay on for a moment after she says goodnight, that'd be great.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Morgan. It was a pleasure. Um, and we love you all. Many blessings. See you next week, everyone.